So this is lesson 8-1, solving equations with rational coefficients. So the first thing we're going to talk about is called inverse operations. You've heard that word before. A number's inverse is where you take it and flip it. So the example they show right here is 3 over 4. The inverse of that would be 4 over 3. Okay, what it means by operations is they undo each other. So 3 over 4, because if you were to multiply a number by its inverse, it will always equal 1. So we're multiplying, sorry. So 3 times 4 is 12. 4 times 3 is 12. 12 over 12 equals 1. That will always happen when they are inverses of each other. Okay, so we can use that to cancel each other out or undo stuff to get rid of fractions. If it's a negative, so negative 1/2, that stays with it. So the inverse of that would be negative 2 over 1, or just negative 2, because that's a whole number. Okay, so let's look at example 1. It's on the next page. Okay, example 1. Solve 4.2x equals negative 52.5 and check your solution. So jumping ship, we're not looking at a fraction right now. So we are just solving an equation. We're solving for x. So to get x by itself with the equal sign, we have to get rid of this 4.2. It's being multiplied. So we always do the opposite to undo, and we divide, which is what they've done here. Anytime you do it on one side of an equation, you have to do it on the other side to keep it balanced. 4.2 divided by 4.2 is 1x, and then negative 52.5 divided by 4.2 is negative 12.5. We drop the 1 because we can see that that is 1x, and it's negative 12.5. You can always take that number and plug it back into the original equation to double check and make sure it's true. 4.2 times negative 12.5 does equal negative 52.5. So I'm going to have you try 2 of them, just the circled ones. You're not going to do 1C or 1B. So you're going to try 1A and 1D. And then I will go over them with you. 1A and 1D, we are solving for the variable. On 1A, we're solving for x. 1D, we're solving for z. So on 1A, I have negative 19.6 equals 5.6x. So we're trying to get x by itself with the equal sign. So I want to get rid of this 5.6. They're being multiplied, so we do the opposite and divide both sides of the equal sign. That's how you keep your equation balanced, is you do the same thing on both sides of the equal sign. That divided by that is 1x. Then we have, I just realized I forgot to grab a calculator. We have negative 19.6 divided by 5.6. And I typed it in wrong. I accidentally did 2 negatives. Negative 3.5. And we've solved for x, so that's all we do. So hopefully you got that one. Okay, on 1D, same thing. I'm dividing, but now I'm dividing by a negative. Okay, that's the only way to get rid of that negative is divide by it. So I'm still left with z because we cannot have a negative z. That's not solving for z. It has to be positive. So I have 323.4 divided by negative 13.2. That comes out to negative 24.5. And that's our answer. Example 2 is a word problem. It says a drive-through Safari Zoo charges $12.50 per person for admission. That's how much it costs for each person that goes. In 1 hour, the park raised $675 in admission fees. Write and solve an equation to find how many people visited that hour. Now, most of you already know how to solve this. You do this number, the total, divided by how much it costs for each person. Okay, that is essentially what you're doing to find the answer, but they want us to write and solve an equation. So we have to write an equation first. So if you already knew to divide that means you're undoing the operation, which means there's multiplying somewhere in your equation. So if we go back, in 1 hour, the park raised $675 in admission fees total. That is your total. That's what your equation will equal. Okay, and we know it's $12.50 per person. And we don't know how many people. That's what we're trying to figure out. But we know if each person costs $12.50, if there was 5 people, we would do this number times 5. So however many are going, we're going to use x. You could use any letter. Times $12.50 is what will give you that total. Here is our equation. $12.50 or 12.5, 1250, x equals 675. Then we have to solve it. So we would divide both sides by 1250, and that is how they got 54. That just means the zoo admitted 54 people in 1 hour. Okay, you are going to attempt number 2. You can pause the video to write it down. You are setting up an equation and solving it. And then I'll go over it with you. Example 2 says a 1-year in-state camping permit for New Mexico state parks costs $180. If the total income from the camping permits is $8,280 during the first day of sales, write and solve an equation to find how many permits were purchased. So we're doing 2 things. We've got to write an equation and then we have to solve it. So if I go back and read that again, it tells me that a 1-year camping permit costs $180. So we know we have $180 somewhere. That's how much it cost for 1 permit for the year. Then they tell me the total income is $8,280. To me, that's the easiest part to set up first, the total. We know that's what it equals, $8,280. And then it says that was during the first day of sales. Write and solve an equation to find how many permits were purchased. Well, we know if they're $180 each, 180 with however many permits there are, that's what we're looking for, that's our letter, is going to equal that total. So if they're $180 each, that would be times however many were sold, we don't know, would equal your total. So here is our equation. 180x equals 8,280. You could have said P, doesn't matter, just some variable. So now to solve this, we divide both sides by 180. The zeros cancel, so we have 828 divided by 18, and that equals 46. So there were 46 permits sold. That's what that's talking about. Example 3, we're still solving equations, but now we have fractions. So this first example says 1/4 y equals -8. We're solving for y, and we want to get rid of 1/4. It's being multiplied, so the opposite is to divide, but it's a fraction. We've talked about before, you cannot divide a fraction by a fraction. So this is where that definition we talked about at the beginning comes in, the inverse, or the multiplicative inverse, or the reciprocal. So we take this 1/4, we're going to flip it and multiply both sides of the equation by, in this one, 4/1, which is the same thing as just 4, because 4/1 is 4. So we multiply both sides by 4. And when you do that, that cancels, which is what we wanted, 1y. And then we have 4 times -8, which is -32. Okay, here's another one where they're both fractions. So you have to look at what you're solving for to see what you need to get rid of. So we're trying to solve for x. So we only have to flip this fraction. We do not flip this one. Only the one you're trying to get rid of. So I flip it. It's negative, so I keep it negative. And we multiply both sides by -5/3. Okay, we did not flip the 6/25. When we do that, this cancels. We have a negative times a negative, which is positive. Then you can either multiply straight across, but then you have to simplify, or you can cross cancel. Sorry about that. That bell is on my video. So when you do that and you simplify it, we get that x equals 2/5. You are going to do problems 3A and 3B. Don't worry about 3C or 3D. Pause the video and I'll go over it with you. On 3A and 3B, we have fractions. We're still going to solve for x and m on these, our variable. So on this one, I have to get rid of this -1/2. It's being multiplied, so normally we would divide, but it's a fraction. And remember, we can't divide fractions by fractions, so we use its reciprocal or its inverse. We take that fraction, flip it, and multiply. So -1/2 is going to become, I'll switch colors, -2/1. Which, if you simplify that, that's really just -2. So I'm going to be multiplying both sides of the equation, always have to do it on both sides, times -2, because we got to get rid of that negative. So that cancels. The reason it cancels, I'll show you. -1 times -2 is +2. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 1x. That's how it works. Okay, so then back up here, I'm not done. I have -2 times 7, which is -14. Okay, 3b is the same way. We have a fraction we have to get rid of. 6 over 7m. It's being multiplied. We would divide, but it's a fraction, so we flip it and multiply. So I'm going to multiply both sides of this equation by 7 over 6. This cancels. Now, I'm going to go ahead and look at just negative, positive. I have a negative times a positive, which is negative. Now I can multiply it. So we have 3 times 7, which is 21, over 14 times 6, which is 84. That is not simplified. So I do want to go back a second with fractions. Don't forget, you can simplify it here, or if you look at your problem, you can cross-cancel, cross-simplify to make it easier before you even multiply it. I'll show you both ways. So we'll go ahead and simplify this. I have 21 and 84, and they're both at least divisible by 3. So I'll start with that. 21 divided by 3 is 7. It's still a negative. 84 divided by 3 is 28. And if I notice, I can divide both of these by 7. 7 divided by 7 is 1. 28 divided by 7 is 4. So negative 1/4. Now, if we go back up to that original problem where we were multiplying, up here, I'm going to cross cancel. So if I look this way, I have a 3 and a 6. I can take a 3 out of both of those, if I can stop throwing my marker. So if I divide that by 3, 3 divided by 3 is 1, so I still have a negative 1. 6 divided by 3 is 2. Then if I look at the other direction, I have a 7 and a 14. We can take a 7 out of both of those. 7 divided by 7 is 1. 14 divided by 7 is 2. Now if we multiply on this problem, on top, I have negative 1 times 1, which is negative 1. On bottom, we just have 2 times 2, which is 4, which is the same answer we got. It's just another way that you can cross-cancel. And I realize you probably can't see that green as well, so I apologize. But that's going to be the last problems we look at today.